Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first installment of our new Playbook webinar series, where we speak to experts across several industries and ask them about different educational topics. My name is Allison Zisco, and I'm the editor-in-chief of Home Accents Today, and I am here with Jessica Phillips of the Phillips Collection, Mark Abrams of Port 68, and Joe Harris of WearAware. And we will start off by just going around the screen and giving each of you a chance, if you could just tell me a little bit more, tell the audience a little bit more about yourself and your company. Joe, we'll start with you.
Sure. Thank you, Allison, and welcome everybody. My name is Joe Harris. I'm Chief Revenue Officer of WearAware. We are a digital agency that has worked with the gift, home, and furniture industry for many, many years, managing all things web platforms, go-to-market, marketing activation services, and social media. So welcome, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Joe. Mark?
I'm Mark Abrams. I'm a partner and designer for Port 68. We are a lighting and decorative accessory company in Chicago, and we have showrooms in High Point, Atlanta, and Dallas. And I'm responsible for the design and development of our look and marketing and visuals of our company.
Thank you, Mark, for joining us. And hello, Jessica.
Hi, Allison. Home Accents Today. Thank you for having us. I'm Jessica Phillips. I am Vice President of Business Development at Phillips Collection. We are a manufacturer. We've been around for 40 years, almost 40 years. We have a modern organic aesthetic, home accents, wall decor, furniture.
Wonderful. Thank you all for joining us. So today we're going to talk about social media, how we're currently using it, what its limitations are, and where we'd like to see it go in the future. So we'll start off with, tell me each what your primary objective and who your primary audience is, whether you're trying to reach consumers or your B2B community or both. So, and then we'll talk a little bit more about which platforms that you're using, which ones are more effective than others, and so forth. Jessica, let's start with you.
Yeah, so first of all, we love this topic because obviously social media is very important in today's world. As a B2B company, and we are to the trade, our customers are those interior designers, and we now want to get our brand name out there so people know to ask for us with their designers or with retailers and so on. And so we'll talk about that, but that's a little tricky because we want our name out there, but then we have to redirect everybody to somebody within the industry.
Right. And Mark, who is your primary customer for social?
I mean, we at Port 68, we are to the trade business. My direct customers are designers and e-commerce customers and better retailers across the United States. But social media, to me, is a layering because we primarily focus on Instagram and Facebook. I don't do LinkedIn, I don't do TikTok, I don't do XYZ that's been out there. But it's all about driving traffic to our showrooms and or also our website. With informational, it's about gaining their excitement about new collections. And it goes with that to direct them back to our showrooms and e-commerce, meaning our website, so they can take the orders. Since we don't sell directly to the consumers, and a lot of our product is what I would call blind labeled or private labeled. Some dealers don't use our name, and of course some dealers do because we have licensees with Williamsburg, Madcap Cottage, and Scalamandre, so there's a tie-in there. So it gets to be a little, like Jessica said, it's a little tricky sometimes on who you're directly trying to give the information to, but we have to be careful because we are a to-the-trade company.
Right, right. Do you use different platforms for different purposes? You use Instagram and Facebook the most.
I use Instagram, and because the beauty of Instagram is when you post, you can click and it just goes right to Facebook. So it's basically the same message. Sometimes I'll have a reel on one, or I might post something on Facebook, or I may actually comment to a customer who's tagged us, which is a whole different matter. But I don't generally necessarily just do this is all for Instagram and this is all for Facebook, because since we are to the trade, we're just trying to raise awareness and information about what's the new color. Maybe it's an event, or I might be traveling and it has nothing to do with Port 68, but it's like I'm in Palm Springs and I've just discovered this really great restaurant. Everybody should try it if they're traveling. Sometimes you don't need to, quote, sell everything about your product, but you're selling a lifestyle, you're telling a story, because this, to me, social media, not unlike print and not unlike our catalogs and everything, it is about storytelling. And we all have a point of view. I'm sure Phillips Collection has their point of view, what they're trying to do, and Port 68 has this. We're really just trying to continue to give as much information out in the marketplace so that the customers get excited and follow us, and they treat us like family, but it is a business.
And Jessica, what is your take on how you're using the different platforms?
Well, like Mark's saying, we link our Instagram and Facebook together. For us, Instagram is probably our primary platform right now. Our intention is to post daily, keep people intrigued. But as we all know, the algorithm is constantly changing. The audience is constantly changing. And in addition to what Mark said, we do try to support through commenting, through maybe reposting to stories, showing when the appreciation we have for our customers who do tag us. We also like to promote events. So that would be on Facebook and Instagram. And I will be transparent in saying that I am not well-versed in Reels. I am not well-versed in TikTok. I know that there is a future in that, and then Web3 will take us somewhere else. But for today, my brother and I were actually talking. He's vice president of marketing and creative. And he and I were saying how, like, do we do Reels? Because we really want to be a known brand rather than like known individuals. And so we don't really know how to create a Reel that is exciting. LinkedIn is really important because that's more to the trade. And so we're really staying actively up to date with the people we want to connect with. And I would say those are the three platforms we're really focused on now.
That's amazing. Joe, earlier we were all speaking and we talked about the need for consistency across platforms. Can you weigh in here on, on that need and about how to approach different platforms from your perspective?
Sure. And I love that question, Allison. I think Mark touched on a little bit the storytelling. I think at the end of the day, all the various platforms, all the various channels, whether it's at the market or on your website or on social or in print or wherever it might be, has to have an experience. Your brand, I think, Jessica, you hit on it. It's kind of like, what is the experience you're trying to portray to everybody? And it's hard to have individual experiences across all the various channels. It's almost impossible. We're not big enough in order to go do that. But how do you create a holistic, consistent experience across all of them, keeping it simple? So when somebody interacts with your brand for the very first time, they get a sense of who you are and what you stand for. And then when they go over to your website where they will see your catalog, it's as consistent, it's similar. And it's not just a stark contrast from each channel to the next. So really, as a digital experience agency, what we want is to understand, from a customer standpoint, or our customer is Phillips, or well, it's not Phillips, but manufacturers, is how do we create that a consistent experience when somebody engages with you? They kind of know who you are. They know what you stand for, what products, what categories you excel in, and things like that. And social is one element and one channel where you have to have that, the reels or the stories that that blend into that overall experience you're trying to portray about your brand.
From your perspective, Joe, is it okay to just let certain things go? Like Jessica talked about reels and whether or not to do them. Does it make sense to try every last thing that's out there, or to stick with what you know and what you can master?
We're big into reporting and data. So I think you need to really understand, you can't be everywhere at all times. So really understand where are your customers interacting with, and maybe try a couple of different things and see what's really, really working and double down in those types of areas. Run reports. Where are you getting the most face time? Where are you getting the most conversion? I think, Mark, we talked about this before, social media a lot of times is just organic awareness. How do I get, the likes and the followers have their place? I want somebody to walk into a retailer and say, where's my Phillips? Where's my 468 item? That is general to the consumer marketing and brand awareness. On the other flip side, from a B2B to the trade standpoint, the conversion, the transaction is really important. And how are you doing your ads and your display ads and things like that on the social medias? How are you tracking? What is working? So really, I think you almost have to have like two different gauges, but it's all data and reporting and understand the KPIs that really you want to hit, and figure out, do more of that. And less on the things that are unproductive, because there's so many different things that you can do that is going to be a waste of time.
Speaking of things that are, what's wasting your time, what's making the most use, we're all thinking about like the kind of the budget that we have, right? And that brings me to a question about how you get, how you feel you're getting a return on your investment. Jessica, that's something that we talked about earlier. And how you balance paid posts versus organic ones. Jessica, do you want to share your thoughts on that?
This is a big thing for us because we don't put a product out there and then say, click here to purchase. We don't know if that like or that investment in sponsored ads or something to that effect, we don't know what the direct return on investment is. And so when you're looking at your ROI, a retailer can probably do it much more easily. They see somebody click, the Google Analytics will show that. For us, is it 6 months down the road that suddenly everybody's buying this wall decor? Can we even equate it to that post we did?
Right, can we trace it back?
Exactly. And then sometimes, it's interesting because sometimes we'll look at something and say, 11 a.m. is a really great time to post, and other days it's 4 p.m. It is a Monday more beneficial than a Friday. Are people looking on their weekends? Are they done with, social media? So it is really tricky. And I think it's a lot of trial and error. The thing we see from the money we invest in paid ads is more likes, but even that shows us, is it the product? Is it the photography? What exactly is speaking to the public to generate thousands of likes versus 59? And is that investment of our dollars really worth the ROI? So it's tricky, and I don't have a direct answer for you, but that's such an important topic. And we're constantly trying to figure out that algorithm for us.
Right. And Mark, what has your experience been?
I agree. It is, the word tricky is very valid. Because we're trade, our criteria is different. And like we're going into High Point Market. Well, not everything that we're introducing in a few weeks is going to even be readily available until maybe 6 months. Right. So, the big thing we're trying to do for this time is awareness of, see the new collection, come to the website. I mean, I can always tell when you get new customers who sign in, which means they set up an online account, so you immediately get a bump of new accounts, which we come out of a show going, we opened so many new accounts at this show. We also can prove that at a show, there's going to be so many people, because as we tell people, just because you have an account with us or write an order at the show doesn't mean you have access to the website. You have to log in and sign up, because they may not want their staff having access to everything, which is a whole different criteria. But then you get a bump from that. But it's a layering of print ads, which drive traffic, through social media drives traffic. Everything is about driving traffic to the website and the stores to get the order, or to our reps. So much of this is the rep equation is a whole nother thing different from a retailer. And we have representation that calls on customers, which are calling on designers and stores across the United States. And when we can post something, they also share on their social media. And it becomes like tentacles of more hands that keep seeing it and the more eyes that keep seeing it. You may not see the impact for months down the road, because Again, we're wholesale, but as a retailer, if they're promoting and cross merchandising back to their print ad that they may be running in the local newspaper, to the television commercial, to the social media, it's all about driving traffic into their store for that weekend's big sale. And they know immediately if that sofa or that lamp was successful that was featured in the ad, because either they sold it or they didn't. For us, it's a longer or more organic journey, because you may show it now, but the designer's working on a house for Mrs. Jones 4 months down the road. Then she places the order when her needs are met on the deadline of getting the house ready. It's all layers upon layers, but the biggest thing we're trying to do continually is get more awareness, get more traffic, tell your story, drive people to the website, drive people to the showroom, or get an appointment with the rep so that they can go in and work with them very hands-on, by case, by project, because everything's about a project.
And I think along those lines, and sorry, Allison, but an order is an order. I guess, how much does it matter where the origin of the order really comes in versus getting the order in some ways? And you can't track everything from an ROI standpoint down to the penny. And I know especially on the paid side, you can put Facebook pixels on there. I'm sure you can put Instagram pixels and Google pixels on there and track the transaction from the source 6 months, 9 months, 12 months down the road. But it's the whole goal is to get the order, and no matter where the source might. And I think that's the philosophy we try to always work with our customers on is, at some point, part of it is the cost of doing business, and part of it you can really, really, really track the things that you can track, and kind of don't worry about the things you can't really track.
Thank you. So as we're recording this, we are getting closer and closer to High Point Market. We're all gearing up for that show. So let's talk a little bit about how you approach market. We've talked about putting products on social, but Mark, can you go into, you do a great job about highlighting your introductions on social. Tell me a little bit about how that affects your market experience.
Well, we are 3 weeks from High Point. I always say it's like D-Day and counting.
Yeah.
Like right now, I'm posting teasers, like sneak peeks. I may not show everything about the lamp or the piece of art, give a detail. Like this market, we're introducing a new relaunch with Colonial Williamsburg. We have a license with Williamsburg, which is most exciting. So I've been posting new snippets of the patterns. And even but doing that, I get comments, which is a good reading on social of, I love this pattern, I love the new color, can't wait to see the collection. So you're just building the excitement, getting them to come to the show. And sometimes that turns into, oh, I want more information about the current collection. So then they call customer service, or they go online and open an account, or even they'll reach out to me, like consumers reach out to me, and I'm always going, I'm sorry, we're to the trade. I can direct you to my customer service. It can definitely target you closer to someone in your hometown that would be opportunity for you to order directly from them. Or if you'd like, we can give you an assortment of e-commerce customers who you can order all of this from. So it is, again, the layering, but everything before High Point is all about driving people into the showrooms. I mean, I'm not worried about them placing an order for something that's 6 months down the road, because I want them to come into market over those 6 important days and stop and order and get excited and network and talk to people and fall in love with the product. And, hopefully we have a new customer, or we continue to gain the customer that we have the respect of currently.
Right. And Jessica, what about for you in the Phillips collection? How do you prepare for market over social?
Well, we love market, first of all. And I'm trying to keep this focused on social, but there is a lot of behind the scenes that happen in terms of a virtual meeting with our sales reps, who we value so much, as well as an in-person meeting when they're there. And I believe that the more you hear about something, the more versed you get in it. And so the teasers that we give, which are not teasers in the sense that Mark is saying, but the virtual presentation we give our sales reps, then when they're in the showroom, they want to touch it, they're ready, they know a little bit more about the product and they retain it more. But we also, we usually do some new photography right before market, introducing new products. So maybe teasers of that. And then there's the e-blast aspect of the people that previously attended or the newly registered accounts since the last market, as well as those people like post-market, we do a gallery and we'll maybe promote that on social, like be sure to visit our website to see the gallery in case you missed market. But I think that post-market is super important to now start featuring all those new products. So all the new photography of what we saw and really using those words that everybody loves, like new collection in stock. And that translates, we've tried Linktree on LinkedIn, on Instagram. And for us, just putting our website has been most successful because we're constantly changing our homepage. So now you're seeing like the gallery for High Point, or you're seeing in stock products or back in stock. And as a company with a lot of one-of-a-kinds, that's important. I will also mention that because we're based in High Point, about 10 minutes from market, we really want to encourage people to not only visit the showroom, but then to take, allocate time to go over to our warehouse. We do shuttle people there, so it's super easy. We have food at both locations. And so we want to promote the evening every day. I think it's at 4. And if I'm wrong, my brother will be very disappointed in me. I'm sure he'll text me now. But every day at 4, we have like a really fun sort of meal. So people are stopping in, they're eating, they're making a point to come to Phillips. And I think that's really important for us to get that word out. Like Mark's saying, encourage them to come. And High Point's huge. It's not one building. So you can't do it in one day. So to make time to get over to all of our showrooms is super important.
Agreed. Joe, do you have any additional tips or pointers for them or for any company that's heading into a big market about how they can utilize social media to their best advantage?
No, I think Mark and Jessica hit on it. Build a story online to drive the momentum in order for them to come visit you amongst all the other vendors that they could possibly see. I think the one thing is, Jessica hit on it a little bit, is just when the show's over doesn't necessarily mean the selling season's over as well, too. And how do you leverage technology in your platforms and social to continue that? So it's a 365-day a year process with a couple highlights and very important in-person opportunities during the course of the year. And I think got to keep the engagement continuous leading up to market and post-market as well.
Joe, you counsel your clients about how to, again, work across all the platforms. Let's talk a little bit about how we all learn from our mistakes and what we do wrong. What are there any common mistakes or misconceptions that people have about social that you can kind of correct here?
Well, I think the trying to do too much, start small and build. I think if you can't be perfect in everything right out of the gate. So I think start small, understand where the impacts, where your customers are actually engaging. And then open up a little bit more and more and more, and always run the reports, see what traction you're getting and things like that. I think a lot of companies will go in there and try to be really excellent on every single platform. And that's just, you're never gonna, it's really, really hard to do that. So find that consistent thing that you can easily replicate, do twice, do 3 times. Don't create content specifically for each platform, kind of create content that can apply to multiple platforms. And that gives you peace of mind. You realize you don't have to scale Mount Everest on day one. And I think
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Joe, but in terms of, you want to have the same content across platforms, but each one has its own voice. Is that fair to say? And how do you become conversant with getting the right voice for each channel?
It's probably something I would defer to Mark and Jessica specifically, yes. But I think B2B LinkedIn advertising is much more business oriented. How do I attract more, potential salespeople to my organization? So your content has to be geared towards that. Whereas the other ones where it's very much picture and video and stuff like that, I don't know if you necessarily need to create TikTok video different than Facebook video versus Instagram. Kind of leverage a lot of the same content and the same feel, and then broadcast it out or syndicate it out versus having individual, stories for each. Otherwise, it's just you're going to have to build a big team in order to go do that. I think Jessica said publishing something to Instagram every day. You can't do that if you can't do that across 20 different channels. Now, the other thing too is one thing is organic or social is a trend, right? TikTok's all the rage right now. Who knows what it's going to be next year? It's kind of like having a really, really powerful website where the social channels are driving people to it is really important, because that's something you can control versus whatever the new fad is there from a social standpoint. So that is really, you want those mechanisms, those posts, those channels to drive people to your website, which is a representation of your brand. And then if you kind of consolidate it that way, you don't feel like you're reinventing the wheel every single time too. And you can control your own brand awareness.
And Allison, if I may, because I don't want to cut you off, but just to respond to what, Joe was saying, I think that we have to be realistic that the world does change quickly in terms of the technology, the platforms people are using. And there is like a generational audience that we have to consider. And so my friends are using Facebook less and less, but there's a huge audience that strictly uses Facebook. And so therefore it can't be ignored. Whereas I'm personally using Instagram more. So that's how I find out about new brands and all, fashion, retail, whatever it is. And then there's the TikTok generation that my son tries to explain to me, and I have zero idea or why it's interesting, but they want that 5-second turnover.
Yep.
So, it is a little bit of trial and error, but what Joe is touching on is like, we want to drive people to our website, but I also want to make sure that my website, my e-blasts are driving people back to my social pages. And another thing is like your brand's identity being consistent. We may be inspired by a company and how their photography looks a certain style, or they always are, sharing more what's happening in the world. And we respect that, but we have to differentiate ourselves and really stay true to who we are. We're storytellers as a brand. And so telling the story behind the product, why the name is this, or where it originated from, or why is sustainability really important to us? And something else we didn't really talk about is hashtags, which we're finding like our tagline being a hashtag, in the beginning, it doesn't generate that many clicks, but then over time, our hope is that when they see that, that becomes, something that connects them to us. Whereas we also have to put interior design and furnishings industry and High Point Market Authority or anything of that, and it is trial and error, but these things, it's so important to get informed on what people are doing and how the search is evolving.
I agree. Back to your first question of mistakes. The biggest thing I will tell everybody from retail to trade to everything is please proof your post or immediately edit typos. I mean, the biggest mistake we can all make is put a post out there saying sale is this Saturday and the sale was Friday. Retail, and you're having the special dinner, the steak dinner on Friday night, and you posted it on Saturday, you're $1 late and a day short. The biggest consistency with all of us is we have to be consistent and be grammatically correct and date correct and make sure that you're consistently, whatever you're posting or e-blasting, in addition to your print ad, to your television ad, to your social, everything connects together and it needs to be consistent, but it also needs, as I said, needs to be grammatically and graphically correct. You don't want to make the mistake and grab, you're talking about XYZ lamp, which is part of this collection, and you post an image from something else. You immediately need to take it down and correct it. I don't think most of us make that many mistakes, and I'm not perfect. And yes, I'll immediately go, oh my God, how did I miss that typo? Or it's spelled incorrectly, or the date's wrong, or the showroom location is wrong, or your address for your store is not, you didn't put, the biggest gripe I have with so many people on retail social media is they know that they're from their hometown. But when you're posting the address to the event, you need to say it's in High Point, North Carolina, not just say, this is 1201 Main Street.
Yeah.
1201 Main Street to where? You could be on Jupiter. I don't know. I mean, please put all the information, and you often say, I mean, more importantly, sometimes with social, everyone wants to go, you know, make sure you don't forget to put your website, like, if you need more information, contact customer service at this. Here's my phone number, and here is my website, and here's my address. I mean, since we're trade, we don't put our address because I don't think I want people, to the public or whatever, going to my warehouse, but at least drive them to the platform, which is contact customer service. The ladies and men that are there are much nicer to deal with than me, and they're going to answer all the questions and get all the information that they may need for that moment. But the biggest thing is just slow down, proof your stuff, post it consistently, and you'll be fine.
Well, now that I know that Mark's phone number is out there, I'm going to start giving that out. I think
Not my phone number, my business phone number.
But
We'll be calling you, Jessica, for every Phillips order from me, right?
but I will be nice, I promise. But I will say, you know, I can't believe I didn't touch on typos. Typos make me cringe in every aspect of my life. And it happens though, we're human, it happens. And sometimes there's a lot of info, and thank God you can edit Pinterest posts. I mean, Instagram posts, Pinterest. I'm glad I slipped that, because I totally forgot that that is a huge platform for us. And two things I want to mention on that. One, we have a table that's very iconic for us and recognizable. So the more people are reposting it, the more the end consumer is now searching for it. And then they find it their own way, either through e-commerce, or they contact a designer, or they go to our website. And that's super important for us. And something that we realized is we used to do Pinterest and kind of, you know, like the background I'm using, maybe we would have put the copy on, you know, right here behind me, but then the next image we put it here, and how when you do a layout, how that actually is overwhelming. And so now getting into consistency with the font we use when we're doing text on top of an image. And these are all, I mean, mistakes. These are all things that we've done part of the learning curve, because each individual image with the copy looks beautiful and is talking about texture or a trend or a new finish. But if your eyes are going all over, one, you can't identify the brand as the same thing. And two, it becomes too much. You know, Pinterest is visual. So you want to click on our page on Pinterest and be like, oh my God, scrolling, because you're just so in awe, and you now know where your eyes should go to get information. So that's been an interesting learning curve for us as well. And Pinterest is great because you can actually read the analytics, and Joe deals with data and analytics. And so anytime you can measure something, it just helps. Like, how are people responding? And then hopefully someone like Joe can track that to him and go back to his customers. And so, yeah, I forgot Pinterest.
Pinterest is critical. Joe, any thoughts here?
No, I think a couple of things. One, I think Mark is awesome, right? And I think whenever you post, you got to be real and true to yourself. Don't be robots as well. You know, typos are typos. Nobody likes typos, but we all make mistakes. You got to be real too. So don't overcorrect to stifle your brand. If your brand is a little bit more whimsical, be whimsical. If it's more austere, be austere. But, you know, just kind of be true to yourself. And that you know, your brand will always cascade and continue that way. So I think it's very important to be true to yourself across all the channels.
Good advice. Good advice. We were talking earlier about how things are constantly evolving and how hard it is to keep a pace with change. But I'm still going to ask the question, Joe, tell us what's on the horizon? What should people be looking towards? What do you expect? How do you think social will change over the next couple of years, and how can businesses prepare for that?
Well, I think one is to change. Expect change and expect the change and whatever that might be. So don't be surprised when it happens. I think from a technology standpoint, there's a couple major things that are come there. This is probably a separate topic, but the need to gain first-party data when eventually you're not going to be able to put a lot of pixels on your websites to track a lot of information. That's going to go away. So really build an infrastructure to obtain, your profile of your customer. Customer data profile programs or platforms are kind of like the rage right now. So you can actually start, wow, we understand this is to the trade business. At the end of the day, everybody on social is a consumer. Doesn't necessarily matter if you're an owner of a business or you're a buyer of a business or you're a mom or a dad. It's all the same. So how can you layer in the platform to say, okay, I know this person exists. It's an anonymous person, and then start profile or getting progressively more information about that person. What categories are they shopping on my website? Which channels are they interacting from a social standpoint? And then now you can start taking a whole bunch of anonymous data and make it real and actually identify a person. And then now you can go in and start personalizing content based on that person. And I think now where the technology is taking is we expect, it's freaky, it's big brother that everybody knows who we are. But we also, when it's not there, we're like, why don't they know what I want? And we've transcended that. And so if we're not, as businesses, if we're not giving, if we're not treating our own businesses that way, then we're going to lose the companies who are. And I think understanding that business, what is that persona? Who am I trying to understand? Who am I trying to target? What is the profile of those people? How do I personalize? How do I send that right message to them? Not just an e-blast, but a very specific email that has what you've purchased before and when you should purchase again. That's gonna help. And you can even apply that to social areas as well too, with retargeting and things like that. So I think there's a lot, but I would say experiment. You're never going to be right the first time. Continue. It's okay to fail. It's always better to get better. Personalizing a lot of the content and then embedding the technology so you can actually understand the profile of those customers that can have tentacles out into all the various platforms.
I love that. And I'm excited to see what targeted ads I get after, we're talking here because someone's listening. But,
Yes.
What you were saying about, about gathering info, how important that is. We've started to add to our databases under each customer. Like we just created a thing to add their different social media handles because I don't know how that's going to be used, but I know I have to start collecting that. And I know there are people that, really promote themselves. And we have to remember the new generation of designers and retail stores that don't have a large audience and maybe don't know how to get started on this journey. And they want to know, like, High Point is something the end consumer doesn't necessarily know exists, and it's so huge. So if you're graduating design school, how do we support you and inform you? Because those are our future customers. And so even in our back-end systems, we now want to create, if we look at somebody's website and I see that they do landscape design or their aesthetic is like this coastal look, I want to be able to start gathering that info. I don't necessarily know how to use it. I don't know if it's an e-blast. I don't know if it's a suggested product when you go on my website. But I need to know I need to gather that now. So when there are systems in place, like Joe is saying, we have that readily available. I just went to a conference and they were talking about Web3 and NFTs. And I literally thought NFTs were like avatars that my child is talking about. And it's like when they talked about smartphones, we all thought that was insane. We couldn't even picture what they were talking about. But one day, now we can't imagine life without them. And so one day there will be a totally different way to target people, and we have to gather it now.
Right. Agreed. I think all of these suggestions are so smart. They make so much sense, but it can be a little overwhelming, in terms of time management. I don't know that and for Mark and Jessica, this probably is not the only thing that you do, right? This is only a small part of what you do each day. So do you have a strategy for how you manage your social media? How do you manage your time? Or do you allot a certain time of the day? Do you program things ahead of time and let them go? Or how do you address the time constraints of your day? Mark? I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, I've learned for me, it's almost better when I start the day, get on the computer, do all the stuff. And then if I post in the morning, I know I've gotten it out of the way. And I don't necessarily post every day. Like we don't send out e-blast every day, because we've learned with e-blast, which is tied into social media, people opt out. What I don't want them to do in social media is they unfollow you because they become irritated because you posted too many. There gets to be a point where I'm going, my God, I don't need to know that XYZ went to the bathroom today or lunch. I assume everyone eats lunch. Don't that you went to lunch unless it's some fantastic restaurant that you do randomly, not every day. I do think that we have to be consistent. I do think for me, I know when I'm traveling, I try to post something fun that may not see normally that has nothing to do with the product. But then getting ready for a market, it's like, this is coming, get ready. It's kind of like a countdown, save the date, the wedding's coming. You try to build up to it until it's opening day of market. And then every day at market, you post 2 or 3 times a day, because if they're at a market, they're probably not looking at their phone, because if you're in High Point, there's 14 million square feet of showrooms. I hope they're looking at many, many things. But then there may be somebody who's in Middle America who's not at the show, who would love to see that lamp or that object that's really exciting that we're talking about, that's very specific to that moment. Or we're having a market party and you're posting at 3 o'clock, don't miss the 4 o'clock cocktail party because we're doing it. Well, you do that every day. There's not a cocktail party every day, probably. I think there are things that you do that are very timely. And again, like I said, we do what we do because we're directly to the trade, whereas the store, back to the retailers, they're promoting, we having a book signing today at 3 o'clock. Well, they probably promoted the book signing the week before, and then they build it up, and then it's don't miss it, and then today is it, and then it's the thank you for coming because we had a great event, which they promote the next day. It's all layering, but you want to be consistent in whatever you're doing by telling your story of how you do it, what it looks like. Sometimes you put people in it, sometimes it's products, sometimes it's Mrs. Jones looks chic in her jacket and she came to the event. That makes it fun. And then she falls in love with you because you talked about her and she looks great. Everybody likes having pictures of people, but you just got to mix it up.
Jessica?
So I will say that my father, Mark Phillips, who's our CEO and president, he takes his blazers and shoes very seriously. So that may be the only reason you come by, but please comment on his blazer and shoe, because there's like a lot of thought that goes into it.
He has great shoes. He
does have great shoes. Oh, you just forget it, Mark. You're just on his best side right now. But,
I have great shoes, but he has better shoes.
He takes the cake in my boat. But I think that, in terms of, yes, the buildup is so important and getting people there. And for us, and I'm sorry if I'm veering off and just going off Mark's conversation, but I think that, during market, it's really important to, if we're not posting right away, to repost what everybody else is posting. And because they tag you, it's simple to just add it to your story. But some people are great at reels, and that reel can, generate more eyes and also support them. So I may not have time to go through my showroom and show photos of it. And if somebody is or isn't there, then they're seeing the action, and maybe the next market, they're going to want to be there because now they understand what this means, and it's fun. And it's not this boring trade show, but you're seeing friends and everyone's excited. and seeing new products. What does that mean? And so I really do rely on those people who are doing the work for us, essentially. I will say, in terms of planning, just going back to that, like Hootsuite has been a great tool for us, and we're always testing out new ones. But with Hootsuite, they even recommend the best time of day on a certain day. And you can now plan out, because I used to do it every day. And I have such a talented team at Phillips who handles our photography, and they go to the photo shoots and they style them. And then they now can lay out a grid for us for the week or the month or whatever it is. And so we're not scrambling for photos anymore to post, but instead we know every day's post and how it's visually going to lay out. We can create the copy, we can do it in Hootsuite and schedule when it launches. And so it may be more work. Sorry, I'm disappearing here. It may be more work in a moment, but it ultimately saves us that day to day, or, oh my God, I forgot it, or, life happens. And so I will say Hootsuite's been a really nice tool. But again, like we're talking about, it's been trial and error. Like there's always great companies coming up. Are they, do they sound better than they are? Or is this a great tool that we should all be using?
Right, agreed. Joe, any additional tips on time management and project management in this case?
Yeah, well, I think obviously Jessica and Mark are much more of the product people and exciting people, and I'm just a boring technologist. But I think one of the things that we've seen is it's an important element of your company, and you need to invest in it, and you need to have some people who can focus on that, or it's not, maybe it's Mark's and Jessica's job, but I think it's going to become much more important. There needs to be something there. Now, I think the other part is that there's also the business side, and especially social advertising is gaining a lot of traction, even in the B2B. So it's not just about come to our showroom, it's also monetizing. How can I leverage social advertising and social networks in order to drive transactions as well? That's something where finding somebody who knows how to do that extremely well, whether it's an agency like us, whether it's a social media expert, that may be something that you want to outsource versus trying to hire within, or otherwise you're gonna have to build a team of 5 or 10 different people in order to go do that type of stuff. So I think focus on the, where's your passions, and make sure you invest in those people internally can do that. Come see us, or here's our new release, or here's Mark, or here's my blazer, or whatever it might be. But then, what the other really scientific part, like how can I generate higher return on a $10,000 a month social budget? You leave that to more of the experts.
Very good. So I think we've covered a lot of ground here. And just to wrap up, I think, Joe, you did kind of do a good summary, but if you had one piece of go-to advice for brands with regard to creating a social strategy, what would that be?
I think at the end of the day, take the time, measure results, and experiment, and try new things. And experimenting is really, really, really important. And it's okay to dabble. It's not like setting up a showroom where it's the same exact thing for 2 weeks, or printing a catalog where it has to last a year. A lot of social, a lot of digital right now is kind of like you can always update it, you can always tweak it, you can always make it better. And so invest into that philosophy, kind of like that core sentiment. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to fail fast and improve. But you need to make sure you start measuring the results from that standpoint, and see what works, and go from there and make it better.
Very good. Mark, in your experience, do you have a piece of go-to advice for your colleagues, your peers?
I guess my biggest thing, and I guess this is from my degree, and I have a degree in advertising a million years ago. And the biggest thing is be consistent in your message, whether it's across the board, whether if you're running an ad, it should be similar to it should have your vision of your ad should match your store. It should match the personality of the people that work for you. It should match the product that you're selling across all avenues of social. If you're consistent in your story, it'll work. And even if you're running something in social media where you can actually just, in layman's term, get a gauge of this was successful because you promoted an event or a thing and you had lots of people show up, then you know it worked. And then you just keep building and building. It's about the layers. I mean, to me, everything is about the layers of success, because not one thing you do will probably be the big success. It's the continuity of everything working together with that point of view, and the fact that you're consistent, you're going to win.
Thank you, Mark. And Jessica, what would be your go-to advice for?
I think these two gentlemen touched on a lot of things, but I think, you know, in what Joe said, don't be afraid to fail and take risks and do that. It's a very forgiving world. Even post this pandemic, we understand that sometimes we come from the gym and show up for a meeting. You know, everybody's a little more human now, and that formality is kind of gone. So be authentic. And what Mark was saying, like, have a brand voice, have it consistent. And I think for someone like us, if Instagram or Pinterest is our strongest platform, then put your effort into that, dabble in the others, try to learn them as they come. You know, are making Reels or TikTok something that matches our brand? Or are we just trying to play with everybody else? So find what works for you. And if that's not social media now, that's okay. There may be something next year that debuts that works for everyone.
Great. Well, thank you all. Great advice, great conversation. I really appreciate you joining us and sharing your experience and your advice. It's all most welcome. For those of you watching, if you have any questions for any of our panelists, you are welcome to reach out to me. My email address is azisco@bridgetowermedia.com. It's A-Z like zebra, I-S-K-O @bridgetowermedia.com. So I'd be happy to filter out your questions to Mark or Joe or Jessica as you have them. And other than that, thank you all for joining us. Please come back next month when we talk about tips for photography in our October playbook.